In this presentation, we are going to look at the impact or the impacts of the Second World War on nationalist movement in Africa during the colonial period. The impact of the Second World War on nationalist movement in Africa during the Second World War. The Second World War, which began around 1939 and ended around 1945, had very huge impact in Africa. Well, the war that started as an European war later escalated to a point that other nations or other countries got involved. On one side of the war was Germany, Italy, and then on the other side had Britain, France, and some other European countries. As the war expanded, developments led to the entrance of the war by the United States of America, the USA, the Soviet Union, led by the Russians, the Japanese, entered the war at different times due to some escalations that happened. Well, on the part of colonies, this period actually that this war was fought was a period that colonialism was at its height. Most European countries or some European countries had colonies around the world, and one of the places was Africa. So troops from these colonies fought on the side of their colonial masters. African troops were involved in the war on the side of Britain, France, that had a huge number of colonies in Africa. The Indians also were drafted into the war, the Indian soldiers on the side of Britain. Australian troops were also involved in the war. During this war, a lot of social restructuring were encountered, which later became a platform for the engagement of Africans against the oppressive colonial structures. During this war, Africans, or there were mainly blacks that fought in this war, realized the fact that the concept of superiority of the Europeans was wrong. They fought alongside Europeans who were Caucasians or whites. They saw Europeans take bullets. They saw Europeans die. They saw Europeans bleed. And the consciousness of equality was registered in their mindset. The misinformation of the unnecessary concept of superiority of the white man was discarded in the minds of these Africans. Most Africans even found out that they were even surviving better than these Europeans or these whites. By so doing, when they returned back to Africa, they started leading organizations against oppression of colonial structures. Well, during the war period, some of the African troops or Africans that fought in the war learned how to read and write. They learned how to read European languages and how to write European languages. They also learned skills and professions or trades that helped them or that work towards their self-development. This opened their eyes towards the ways of the white people, or also the ways of the Europeans. When most of them came back, they formed associations towards the liberation of Africa. Well, another factor was the main concept of this war. One of the reasons for the British, the French getting involved in this war was that they believed that they were fighting the oppressions, the dictatorship of Adolf Hitler. And this was the major focus and major media point during this war. When Africans fought in this war, they were told that they were fighting against oppression, fighting against dictatorship, fighting to preserve democracy, fighting to protect liberty, freedom against the dictatorial activities of Adolf Hitler. When these Africans returned home to Africa, they started demanding for the same thing. They made it very clear, we fought for all this, and you that told us that we fought for all this is same time doing the same thing in Africa, and we will not accept it. Some of these war veterans organized militancy activity against the Europeans. We have a good number of them in Africa, some in Kenya, some in Nigeria, and other parts of Africa, even in the French-controlled colonies in Africa. Well, the next thing we have to look at for here was the activities itself. Upon returning to Africa, these former soldiers or war veterans organized associations, created or founded associations in order to work against the discriminatory activities of the Europeans. Well, they started telling their brothers and sisters about the negative tendencies of colonialism, the oppressional tendencies of colonialism, and the imperialistic tendencies of colonialism. Then to pressure this, they started working towards founding political parties. In fact, after the World War, after the Second World War, the number of political parties founded in Africa increased. Before that time, there were few of them. But after the Second World War, the number increased. In fact, the number increased to a very high level. And then the very few that were already in existence had a good number of Africans enlisting as members in order to start pressuring for participation in their political determination. Well, after the war as well, with the emergence of political parties, actions and activities against colonialism took off. But there was another development. After the war, the world witnessed strong economic recession. And this economic recession was as well felt in the colonies of these European countries. And Africa suffered, our Africans also went through this downturn in the economy. This led to unacceptable unemployment. And this high level of unemployment encouraged the movement toward the urban area. People in the rural areas started moving towards the urban areas. Even in the urban areas, they could not even have anything to help put themselves in order. They still faced unemployment. For this reason, most of them joined the pressures against colonial control. Let us look at another important global factor. Prior to the World War, to the Second World War, after the failure of the League of Nations, the world powers then were mainly in Europe. Britain, France, Germany were the major world powers at that period. But with the outcome of the Second World War, the world power status left these countries and shifted to USA and precisely the Soviet Union or USSR. These two became the superpowers after the World War. With this superpower status, they started demanding for a change in the global structure or the global system or the international system. These two new world powers as at that period had no colony, or they didn't have any substantial colony outside their territory. And they saw no reason for them to continue supporting or for them to support the continued colonization. So they demanded and started pressuring these European countries to give up to give independence to their colonies. Well, this pressure from these superpowers and the pressure from different colonies of these European countries, and also the pressure from groups, militant groups, political groups, social groups, humanitarian groups, religious association, was so much on these European colonial masters. They started giving out independence one by one to all these different to their different colonies. In Africa, and mainly Asia and also in other areas, the British speeded up or increased the concept of giving out independence. But in order to create some level of association, the British established the Commonwealth to increase collaboration and association between Britain and her former colonies. Well, it was a very huge international political engagement, the World War. Although it's a violent concept, but it opened the eyes of Africans. It was able to help towards debunking the unnecessary or misinformation about the superiority of the white man. Please subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell so that anytime we drop any new content, you will be highly notified. Thank you for still being part of this presentation.